Hey everybody, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff we're going to do next week and some of the ways that you can get yourself ready for next week's assignment by practicing something this weekend and bringing the content in on Monday. Just as a reminder, next week we're going to go over some of the stuff that you come up with based on today's assignment. And also next week we will go over radio, so how radio scripts are different than television scripts and how radio works as a business in general. All right, so last class we talked about three different kinds of basic news story on TV. We talked about the reader, we talked about the voiceover, and we talked about the voiceover to sound on tape. Now let's talk about the fourth and the most complex of styles, and that is called the package story. Now the package story is where the anchor is going to cut to a field reporter who's going to show a combination of other shots and layered sound on tape that they worked on throughout the day. This is all stuff that's shot and put together during the day, and so essentially the way it's going to work is you're kind of just pressing play on it when it's time to for it to be on television. So this is how it starts. We've got our anchor, and our anchor is going to read into the camera. The cost of graffiti in Milwaukee might soon go to the property owners and businesses. The city is considering a fine for those who let vandalism linger too long. News Channel 8's Barbara Rivera is here with reaction to that proposal. Now at this point, we have the anchor again reading into the camera based off the prompter. The anchor is now going to throw, sort of the verb we use here is going to throw it to the side area of the studio where you're going to have a field reporter who's not going to be out in the field but is going to be in the studio standing in front of a green screen. And the field reporter is going to say something like this. Well, Lester, the reaction is mixed. Police say that the longer a tag is left on the wall, the greater the risk of more people vandalizing in the area. But some businesses are fuming over the idea. Now at this point, we're going to have instructions based in the script that's going to tell everybody what's going to cut to what. In reality, what's happening is in the production room, someone's hitting play on a pre-recorded, pre-edited package. So it would cut to a voiceover, and the voiceover would say something like, Mike Clabo has covered up dozens of graffiti tags at his Milwaukee gas station. The culprits never cease. Notice that the video with this is going to be spray paint on the outside of his gas station. Now we're going to cut to a bite. Remember on Wednesday when we talked about what a bite was. It is a source answering a question on camera, but the question itself is not heard. And the bite would be our gas station owner saying, hey, this stuff is a real big problem and it needs to be dealt with. Now the instructions will say back to Rivera voiceover. So we're going to have the video of a tag on a wall, there's graffiti on a wall, while Rivera, the reporter, does the voiceover work and says, police have documented numerous recent dangerous graffiti incidents. Police say they show an escalation of rival gangs antagonizing each other. Now we can cut to like a graphic. Most of you who've seen a news package will be able to visualize what a sort of graphics package would look like on the screen. It's a chart that sort of is interactive or moves, or it's a listing of detailed numbers and information. And it would say something like, police investigated 80 cases of people calling to complain about graffiti in 2015. That number jumped to 230 cases in 2016. That's a 188% increase. Quick removal of the graffiti is key, they say. Now we'll cut, because we're talking about City Hall now, we'll cut to the camera, which will have footage of the outside of City Hall, and the voiceover will say, Mayor Bob Drake is pushing for a new ordinance requiring property owners to clean up graffiti within 7 days, or face a $250 fine. Now we're going to cut to another bite, this time of the mayor, and the mayor is going to say, it was time to ramp it up and deal with it. The $250 is reasonable, it's enough to get people's attention, that's for sure. Now the instructions are going to indicate back to Rivera voiceover, where the voiceover will say, Clabo says there are better ways to curb graffiti than punishing property owners. Now because we're talking again back about Clabo and his gas station, the footage on the voiceover instructions will say, hey, use footage of the outside of gas station. Now we'll have another bite. The instructions will say cut to bite of Clabo 2. Now we're back with the gas station owner, and he's saying, that's silly, absolutely silly. I'm already paying for the police to be out there. Why do I have to pay for this too? It's like having the city charge you $250 just because someone else stole your car. Give me a gosh dang break. Because this is Milwaukee, I assume they would say gosh dang. Now the instructions will say, go back to Rivera voiceover. Mayor Drake says the city will help businesses with the cleanup process by giving them free recycled paint from a city dump. But without a new strict policy, he says the increase in tagging may not stop. The footage here, video footage, will be piles of old paint cans at the dump. You can come pick one up if you want one. Finally, cut to Rivera in the live studio. We have our reporter back in the studio in front of the green screen, who will end the story by saying the new rule will apply to all property owners in city limits, including homeowners. Mayor Drake says they'll have 30 days after the ordinance passes before the graffiti rules are enforced. Lester? That is sort of throwing it back to the anchor at the very end. So notice the news package is a combination of cuts that are voiceover cuts, as well as cuts to sound on tape, or bites, that we talked about on Wednesday. So your job is to take, now that you know roughly how a news package works, is to take one of our older stories and convert it to a news package. And because we need an older story, we're going to go back to the lizard story because it's one of my favorites to use in this class. So on the Folio site for this class, I have posted under the Friday Hybrid Lessons module, you'll notice at the bottom here 2 new things. One is a file that says story prompt for script conversion practice. The other is called new script in all caps. So first, if you click on the story prompt for script conversion practice, you'll see that it is kind of just the old instructions that we used for this lizard story back when we did that as practice. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at it and realize, hey, we're going to use this again. Now I've changed the date on it. It just says responded to a call at 11:15 a.m. What I'd like you to do is consider the date for this to be either earlier in the day that you're reporting on it or the previous day. So that as the instructions say that, for example, the lizard is in the possession of that sort of zoo west of Valdosta, that's where it's at, right? If we want to get visual footage, we're not going to get the police officer wrestling the lizard. We're going to get the lizard already in captivity, if that's how we want to work our shots. So this is your basic instructions, and the quotes that you have from people as direct quotes, those are going to be the optional bites. You can pull those to use for bites for sound on tape if you want to. Now the other file is called NewsScript, and you'll notice this is a downloadable file. You'll want to download it to Microsoft Word, and you'll want to use this to convert the story, the lizard story, into a script. On the right-hand side, under the area called Script, that's where you'll type out the actual script portion of the story. This is where you'll type out what the voiceover part will be and what some of the bite portions will be. On the left, in the column called Director Commands, that's where you're going to list the instructions. So you're going to say at some point, cut to this, or cut to voiceover with footage of. So you're going to have to decide, as the reporter on this story, what you want your visual elements to be. What are you going to make your camera operator go and take video of? So you've got some options here, right? There's things you're going to want to consider. What visuals do you want to have for those voiceovers you're going to do as a part of this story? Think about what your settings are. You can have someone go out to that farm where the lizard is living now and have footage of the lizard in its habitat. You could have footage of the playground where the lizard was captured. Now the lizard's not there anymore, but if you have a playground with a bunch of kids on it and there's a slide in the shot where the lizard was captured, that might be visually compelling. You might also think about, hey, where the lizard was first seen, which was inside the guy's house or outside of the guy's house by a little kid out of the kitchen window. Consider, hey, what if we put the cameraman in the house and pointed the camera out of the window, which is the perspective the kid had when he saw the lizard for the first time. That could be one way of incorporating the visual element. So you're going to want to include the cuts where you want them to be, and include what the visual cuts will be and what the voiceover will be that corresponds with that cut. You're going to have direct quotes, and those quotes will be in the form of bites. So which direct quotes are you going to pull in the form of bites, and when and where in the story will they go? And finally, where will your cuts be? Each cut or each sort of element of the script is only going to have a very small piece or a very small portion for each visual element. If you linger on one thing too long, the audience is going to get bored. So you're going to want to cut after a few sentences to a new visual element, and you need to consider what those visual elements are going to be. So take a look at the instructions, or at least take a look at the information sheet, take a look at the script form, type up what you think a good script would look like for this story, and bring it into class on Monday, and we'll go over what you did. All right, I'll see you guys on Monday.